Welcome to the Jacob's Ladder podcast, where we talk about loving God, loving others, and loving ourselves at work and at home. Today is a pondering or triple P episode where I share some of my thoughts that I hope will be purposeful and meaningful for you, and I combine it with praise for our Creator. Welcome to the Jacob's Ladder podcast, episode 228, which is also a PPP, episode 113, where I'm going to share my ponderings, hopefully with some purpose, and end with some praise. So I wanted to share 3 lessons that I think we could take from a movie called Here, which I saw recently. It's starring Tom Hanks, and it's promoted as having the majority of the cast, I guess, from the Forrest Gump movie. And here's a couple spoiler alerts, just as a warning if you haven't seen the movie, but it takes place over a long span of time where the camera just shows one vantage point inside of a living room of this one house. And it shows different people who live there over time, but the main focus is on a particular family that lived there in the after World War II and into the 60s and 70s and beyond. Basically 2 generations. And the first lesson, even before I get to the 3 men lessons, I just wanted to point out was my initial reaction was sadness because it hit on some heavy topics that kind of I personalized, and it made me sad for about a day. But as I thought more about it, I thought about how I could draw up some positive lessons from that had nothing to do with kind of that emotional reaction. So I guess I would just throw that out there to you, is that we can get something positive from just about everything, as long as we line it up with Scripture and don't just draw our own conclusions that aren't rooted in Scripture. So that's just my initial thought on it. And this was not a faith-based movie in the sense that there was really no reference to God whatsoever in the movie. However, I do think that there were some 3 lessons that we could take at least from it that I wanted to share. So the first lesson is to honor your parents. There was some dysfunctionality in these families, but there was a strong demonstration of honoring of parents, in particular taking care of them in their old age. And it kind of coincided with a conversation I had with a friend who was sharing with me how his elderly father his last wish was basically to stay living in the home, and how his family had taken on a lot of sacrifice to make that happen. In other words, to prevent him from going to a nursing home, they were basically committing their lives. Someone was there all the time with him. And I thought that was awesome. And I think that was much more commonplace in the past. That's rare these days. But that is just one tangible way that we can honor our parents. So I just wanted to commend anyone who's doing that and sacrificing in that way. Of course, there's other ways to honor our parents, but just as a reminder, this is one of the 10 commandments: honor your father and your mother. And it's the only commandment that has a specific promise related to it, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God has given you. So little bits of information like that, when I think are significant, and to me it's an exclamation point, or it's a way to highlight how important this is, and it must be how important it is to God. Otherwise, He wouldn't have added that promise. At least that's a conclusion I draw from it. So let's go on to the second lesson. Stop worrying. And I'll give the scripture verse right away, and there are multiple verses that address this issue, but probably my favorite is from Jesus, from Yeshua, where he says, "Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. In the movie, the main character, Tom Hanks, looking back on his life, realized that he wasted a lot of time and energy worrying about things that may never happen. And actually, there was a different family that lived in a different generation. There was something similar where a man in the early part of the 20th century wanted to fly this new machine, the airplane, and his wife was constantly worrying that he was going to die from an airplane crash. And in the end, he ended up dying from influenza. So that was, I think, another probably intentional way of highlighting the importance of not wasting time worrying about things. The third lesson is to pursue your dreams. And I would add to that is to don't stay stuck in something that you aren't passionate about. If you're going to take the attitude that you're a victim and that you're blaming others, that you're stuck. In the movie, Tom Hanks wanted to be an artist, but he ended up selling insurance, and he was never happy with that. And later on in life, his wife questioned him why he never pursued art, and he kind of said with bitterness, "I had to make money." And so it just, to me, that highlighted not that he necessarily was wrong for making that choice, but he didn't own that choice. He didn't own that choice. He felt like a victim, and he didn't take responsibility for his choice, for the path that he took. And that's what we want to avoid, I think. I've talked a lot in the Christian Men at Work podcast about the question of whether we stay in a job that we're not happy with or not. And it's not a simple question, and it depends on everyone's circumstances. One of the things I think about is that whatever choice we make, to be intentional about it and take our responsibility for that choice, and not to feel sorry for ourselves or blame others, and to pursue God as we're trying to make that decision. You know, even if we don't hear an audible voice and know exactly what to do the best we can and make the most that we can wherever we are in whatever occupation we're in. And the solution might be a combination where you have a job partly for financial reasons, and you have a hobby or something part-time, partly or mainly for your passion. But again, I would not hesitate to tell someone that if they feel like their passion is driving me in a certain direction, to pursue that, regardless of the financial considerations, especially for young people when you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life. You know, you hear it a lot, if you pursue what you love, the money will follow. I think there's a lot of truth to that. So it's probably kind of a mixed answer I'm giving. I think the main point I'm trying to say here is, don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't blame others when it comes to your career option. Make the most of where you're at. And if you feel like God's leading you in a different direction, do it. But do so with gladness and gratitude, and take ownership for whatever your choice is. I would also add along that is, you know, the Bible talks about seeking God's will and not just doing what we think is best. The verse that comes to mind is James 4:13 and 15. It says, "Come now, you who say today or tomorrow, we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell and make a profit, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that." Now, I think it's noteworthy that this is from the book of James, who also said faith without works is dead, and he emphasized the importance of our actions, not just our beliefs, as being a critical part of our faith. So I don't believe this verse is saying don't take an action because you're sitting around waiting to know what God's will is. But I think your heart is to never get too far away from focusing on God when it comes to pursuing our career options in life. Always be thinking about him, even if you don't know with certainty what his will is. Don't separate yourself from him. Always stay as close as you can to him. God says, if you draw near to me, I'll draw near to you. So just to the best of our ability when it comes to our work or every other part of our life, just try to stay close to God, and you can't go wrong. All right, so those are the 3 lessons that came to mind for me. Maybe you saw the movie and you have other ideas. But I'm going to finish up now with a praise, and that is, I guess you could say, related to the second lesson about not worrying, and it comes from Psalm 94:19, and it says, "In the multitude of my anxieties within me, your comforts delight my soul." So I guess that, to me, that's just a reminder, the psalmist had anxieties. We all have anxieties. We're in a fallen world. But even if we have many anxieties, his comforts delight our soul. And if we're not feeling that, it doesn't mean it's not true. And so I encourage you with that, and I praise the Father for that. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again soon.